This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
Welcome to another episode of The Eagle, a Times Union podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Marshall. Well, it's mid-April here in upstate New York, and nothing is certain with the weather or with the state budget. We're going to start off this episode by throwing it to Capitol Confidential's Dan Clark, who recently sat down with Governor Kathy Hochul's budget director, Blake Washington.
We are in your office right now.
Indeed.
How many times have you slept on that couch?
Zero.
Zero.
I'm happy to say I've not slept on that couch. I've been here about a year and a half, almost 2 years. Have not taken up that yet. I'm more of a chair sleeper. If necessary, I would close my eyes for 5 minutes or so, but try not to make too much of a habit of sleeping in the office.
Good. I mean, everybody should not make a habit of that. I think I would never sleep in my office. For one, because the LCA is filled with asbestos. For two, I don't want to get disturbed by any reporters who are there. You have been here about a year and a half in this role. It's your second state budget. How does this feel different? Does it feel different or about the same as last year?
Roughly the same. I mean, at least the fundamentals are roughly the same. We have some different headwinds than we did last year. We have obviously financial markets are being roiled over the last couple of weeks, and that's happened since we've introduced the governor's budget. We also have a new Congress that has a lot of fire in the belly and a lot of creative energy around restraining aid to states, and yes. That's going to, as those cuts become known, that'll complicate the process in the coming months. But as for the moment in time, it feels very similar. The governor, working with her and our senior team, it's steady as she goes. We're focused. We're trading information with the legislature. We're keeping each other up to speed on a daily basis. The work of the people goes on.
What does that look like when you have these federal cuts? It's difficult to budget, obviously, because you don't know how much you're going to have to fill or how much is going to be taken from you or anything like that. What is that like? Let's say it's September and we get a bunch of cuts. Is that just like we're going to restart like this whole budget conversation? We bring everybody back and say like, all right, now we got to amend this thing. That's what I'm most curious about is like, how does it happen?
Yeah, so I think it certainly remains to be seen. You know, the state of New York gets well over $90 billion in aid from the federal government any year.
93.
Yeah, and so it depends how deep the cuts are, and I think that it'll require some level of reassessment with the legislature, and it would require us more than likely coming back and assessing if those cuts are deep where it's a material impact to the financial plan. I think everybody is generally oriented around that, even if it's much to our own chagrin here. But in the interim, the governor, I'm certainly the members of the legislature are doing the same, and that is appealing to to our federal counterparts, members of Congress, encouraging them to be as light as possible. The state of New York, particularly as it relates to the Medicaid program, we have a substantial number of people that receive services. 9 million people between Medicaid and other publicly sponsored health insurance programs. So we have a lot at stake here, and so our advocacy has been working with the congressional members on both sides of the aisle to try to head off or mitigate any of those actions as they come. And then obviously we'll deal with the bill, with the law when it comes due. We don't think, at least public reporting indicates that a lot of those discussions in Congress will yield a product somewhere in September, October.
Right.
So in the interim, we've got to get the job done for the people of the state of New York, enact a budget that makes sense, and then live to fight another day. Unless
we don't have a budget until September.
Well, I don't see that. I don't see that happening. There's lots of, I think it's obviously there have been some big issues in this budget that we're working through, but the fundamentals remain the same. We have a governor that's driven to get this done in a responsible way. We have a legislature that wants the same. We're not talking about 98% of the budget in any given year, frankly. So much of that New Yorkers rely upon is plug and play. You start the budget with a base level of budgeting that's required when you think about our schools, Medicaid, human services programs. Those things are still fundamental. They're still integral to a functioning society. A lot of local aid to local governments and things of that nature. Those things must go on. So, at the end of the day, we'll get a budget that solves for all of that.
Well, we all hope so. A balanced budget, if you will. We've seen, as you mentioned, the economic volatility with the stock market, with Wall Street, and the state. I think a lot of people don't realize how much revenue we actually get from Wall Street in terms of their PIT, personal income tax, their bonuses, which I guess is part of their income tax that way. How scary is that as somebody who handles the budget? Is it like a big unknown, or is it more of like, do you have this question on your mind every year as you're putting it together?
Yeah, I mean, every year we have really talented people on the Division of Budget staff that project for these data. They watch the economic fundamentals, and we project forward to see exactly. We benchmark to exactly what's going on, what the facts on the ground are, and what we see into the future, forecasting. So it on a daily basis, we're always watching those data. We always watch daily receipts, and I think that this year, certainly in the last couple of weeks, not only on a daily basis but on an hourly basis, we've been watching some of the trends that move forward, some of the policies that are coming out of the White House. The state of New York is dependent upon Wall Street more so than any other state in the union, and it's an asset that we're proud to have here in our backyard, and we're very, very reliant upon their success to fund the many things that we care about in the state budget. We have the nation's most robust Medicaid program. We have the nation's most robust school aid program on local aid. That doesn't happen by accident, and happens because of this partnership with high-income individuals that work on Wall Street and in the finance and insurance sector. So, when they catch a cold, the state of New York feels it more so than anybody else. So we're watching it, and the level of uncertainty is never a fun thing to watch, certainly from our economic forecasters, but certainly for myself as well.
Is it kind of a situation kind of like the federal cuts, where like I'm wondering, let me hopefully not predict the future. In August, the stock market crashes. It's the Great Depression all over again. What do we do? Is that like a moment where we have to come together and say, guys, the pot is going to be a lot less full this next year. We got to adjust.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we've done this before in the state of New York. I've worked in this building for over 20 years, and there was a time during the Great Recession. Nobody planned for that, but we had to come back mid-year and adjust the budget accordingly, and that was a very painful process. Gallows humor. I was an analyst at the time, and I got to know a lot of programs a lot better than perhaps I would have known otherwise, because if there's going to be funding retrenchment, you better know what you're cutting.
Yeah.
So that was, again, gallows humor, perhaps trying to gild the lily here, but it was an opportunity for a lot of us staff in this building to learn a little bit more about programs. Now, I don't want people to pine for those days, but there is a path forward. There is a playbook for when those if something so calamitous happens, where there's a big recession, it requires all people rowing in the same direction, getting the legislature on board to solve a big problem.
What does gild the lily mean?
Make a purse out of a sow's ear, or this is folksy Sullivan County wisdom here, but you're trying to, lemons out of lemonade, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I know that one.
Try to make something a little bit better than it is, but. all the same, I'm an eternal optimist, so perhaps that's projecting here.
Remind me what years you were head of Ways and Means in the Assembly before this role.
From 2015 to 2023.
So you've had quite a few budgets under your belt. Something I've been curious about is, people say that this current governor is different than the preceding governor on budget talks. How is it from your perspective as somebody who was the Assembly representative in budget talks for so long? Now you're the state budget director, so you're kind of on the other side of it. What's different now between then?
Well, I'd say there is a big difference, and I say it starts with her level of collaboration and actual concern about what the leaders have to say in this process. She values their opinion. She values the opinion of the rest of the legislature. She knows that not everything that she'll propose in the budget will land the same exact way at the end of the day. But she knows also that with an open dialogue and an open chain of staff that can problem solve along the way, that's the way that New Yorkers will have something that people can be proud of. So I say the biggest difference is that this level of collaboration and even in the hard times, the level of dialogue and respect for the institutions that are here in the Capitol building, and I think that goes a long way.
Collaboration is really like the big word. I think I keep on hearing under this governor is she is much less of a teller and more of a working together person. I don't know the name for it. A partner, I guess I would say. Less of a director, more of a partner, which I think can be really valuable, especially in these talks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't just extend to the outward role. It's even internally. When we meet as staff, I'm one of 6 or 7 folks that meet with her as our senior team. And she values all of our opinions, and she wants to hear a difference of sort of life experiences of different people coming to bear on public policy and on spending, frankly. So it's a very gratifying process, and putting together the budget with the governor, because we deal with some heady things. We get inputs from everybody. We have a few laughs along the way, believe it or not.
We do too.
Yeah. So I think that it starts at home, and she is very, very intent on making sure that members of her senior team have a voice. She's very intent that members of my team are in meetings with her when we're talking about budget. She wants to see young people taking a leadership role in budget, not just Blake Washington talking all the time.
Who's going to replace Blake Washington
Right.
Sunday?
Exactly. So she wants to see that. She wants to see deputy secretaries and ops folks. She wants to, and our assistant counsels. She wants to see to get their feedback in real time and have an honest dialogue with her, breaking down the barriers of state government. That's something that I've just been really, I've valued since I've been here.
You can hear more of Dan Clark's discussion on our sister podcast, Capitol Confidential. That's available wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to the Capitol Confidential newsletter for exclusive analysis of State House news from Albany. We're going to take a short break now, but when we come back, we are going to talk about one of the Hudson Valley's most high-profile murder trials, the Megan McDonald case, and how it all ended in a shocking mistrial this week.
Why is healthcare so expensive? What's happening with climate change? And are elections safe? You can find answers to those questions and a lot more with Capitol Confidential from me, Dan Clark. I give you the latest news and analysis from the state capitol and beyond. Sign up now at capitolconfidential.com. That's Capitol with an O, confidential.com.
"12-year-old Jaliek Rainwalker vanished without a trace from a small upstate New York village on a cool November night in 2007. His adoptive parents say he ran away. Police believe he was murdered. But a body has never been found, and a suspect has never been named.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah,
Appreciate
okay,
that.
all right, but you don't want to talk.
Then when I learned they were trying to undo the adoption, that's when I learned that this story was very complicated, well, a lot more complicated than I even thought.
Almost 2 decades later, the case remains unsolved. I'm Jessica Marshall.
And I'm Wendy Libertor.
In this podcast from the Times-Union, we take a deep dive into the mystery of this missing child and try to find some answers.
So have you come to terms that Jalik is probably dead?
Yes.
Okay.
I feel that he was killed on November 1st, 2007.
Available now, wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you're enjoying this podcast, take advantage of all the Times-Union has to offer and support our efforts to bring you award-winning journalism by becoming a Times-Union subscriber today. Go to timesunion.com/subscribe.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Eagle, a Times-Union podcast. I'm Jessica Marshall. Let's head on down to Orange County in the Hudson Valley now, where for the last 7 weeks, 44-year-old Edward Holley has been standing trial for the murder of Megan McDonald in 2003. And just a few days ago, it all ended somewhat dramatically in a mistrial. Times-Union reporter Lana Bellamy spent the last 7 weeks of her life covering this trial. I imagine your head might still be spinning from what happened with this case. We've gone over the story, right? Like Megan McDonald was one of the biggest cold cases for the longest time in the Hudson Valley. We've already talked about that on this podcast, so we have kind of that background already. But I want to kind of set the stage, take us back to the beginning of the trial. What were you seeing? What were you expecting? Where was your head at when this started?
Oh, it feels like so long ago, like another lifetime. I knew because I have been covering all of the pretrial stuff for the past 2 years that this was going to be a long trial. So I was prepared for that. Well, we already knew this was a really complex case. Ed Holley got arrested first for Megan McDonald's murder 20 years after it happened. Mm-hmm. So we knew the investigation in itself was long and complex. The special prosecutors also, they knew they were going to call a lot of witnesses.
There were potentially 80 witnesses lined up, all to help prove or to cast doubt on whether Edward Holley was the one who bludgeoned 20-year-old Megan McDonald to death in March of 2003 in Wallkill, New York. The trial started out with a week of jury selection, followed by opening statements from the prosecution and the defense, and then the prosecution started calling witnesses in the second week. What else was kind of notable before we get to what happens at the end? Any shocking statements by witnesses or, standout things that happened just in the course of the prosecution presenting its case?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was very familiar with, I guess, what was known to the public so far as it related to Megan's murder. The police have been putting out information in hopes that it would generate leads or cause someone to come forward. So we knew sort of a general overview of what they believed happened, but to have people who could actually speak to those elements of the narrative was really helpful, I think. One of Megan's friends who last saw her before she was murdered, Jim Parada, she saw her outside of this party at Billy Russell's house in the town of Wallkill. We had always heard about that encounter. We heard that, that night Megan stopped by that party earlier. Then she went to a friend's house in Middletown, who we find out was Letitia Simpson. And Letitia Simpson got on the stand and talked about what they did at her house before Megan left. Then Megan went back and stopped by outside of the party at Billy Russell's house and spoke to her friend Jim Parada.
Mhm.
And then that's when her whereabouts go dark still. I was glad to hear that, but also there are some things that I was disappointed I didn't get answers about as well.
That is the highs and lows of covering a court case, like a high profile murder trial.
Yes. But
what were you disappointed that wasn't revealed?
I thought perhaps we would just know more about what was supposed to have happened to Megan after she left that party. As far as what was said at trial, the gap between Jim Parada's conversation with Megan, which was sometime maybe around 12:30 in the morning, and then when Megan's body was found later, there's still this more than 8-hour period of when the murder was supposed to have occurred that we still don't know what happened.
Week 3 of the trial did shed light on an element of the investigation that had long been a question. After Edward Holley was arrested in 2023, he told police that he thought one of Megan's other ex-boyfriends could have been involved in her murder, Polly Simpson.
You kept hearing this name over and over during the trial, and even in the pretrial parts. Polly Simpson. When he took the stand, you got more of a look at his personality because his testimony lasted 2 days. You got to hear from him where he says he was that night.
At one point during Simpson's testimony, the judge and the attorneys left the courtroom for a sidebar.
It's a full courtroom. You have, the 12-member jury plus the 6 alternates, and then both sides of the gallery with Holly's friends and supporters and Megan's family and friends and supporters on one side, and then a fair amount of reporters. Mm-hmm. But it was like pin drop silent during the sidebars. And it was just interesting to sit there and see, Ed Holley sitting at the table by himself. Directly in front of him is this guy, Paulie, who he has made no bones about disliking, who he is accused of doing it. I felt like I could feel the tension in there.
During week 4 of the trial, prosecutors honed in on what happened the night of Megan's murder.
And they started to begin to connect the dots. A suspicious car that an eyewitness at the apartment complex, it's called Kensington Manor, where Megan's car was found abandoned. A key eyewitness said that she saw the night that the murder is believed to have happened, that Megan's car looped around the apartment complex twice with another car. She described the dark-colored car as actually being a purplish Honda Civic hatchback. They ended up bringing in the man who used to own a car. He is from New Jersey, that he sort of customized and he tweaked the paint to where it could appear purple or a very dark plum color in certain lights or without certain light. And he sold that car to a person in New York. State police and the sheriff's office in Orange County investigators tracked a purple Honda Civic hatchback that was owned by this guy to Holly's mother. It matched some plate information from her.
Oh wow, okay.
And then they found out that Holly's mother sold this car in April of 2003, which would have been a month after the murder. And then what really sealed the deal, they had an investigator testify to a police interview that Holley gave. And he himself finally said that he used to drive a purple Honda Civic hatchback.
The prosecution rested its case at the end of the first week in April. The following Monday, the defense rested. They didn't bring any witnesses. Then came closing arguments. Then the jury entered deliberations. Like, what was the makeup of the jury? Was there diversity? Were they all men? Was there women? Like, what was the composition of the jury?
It was diverse in race and professional backgrounds and ages too. You know, you had older people, younger people. The one thing is that it was overwhelmingly female.
So the jury goes into deliberation. Where's your head at after 6 weeks of watching them and trying to gauge where this is headed? Like, did you think that they were gonna wrap it up quick? Did you think they were gonna take forever? Like, what was your sense of the outcome at that point?
I actually thought that they were going to come back with a unanimous decision one way or the other pretty quickly.
But the jury deliberated for a week. Then, on April 15th, they gave the judge a note. They were hopelessly deadlocked.
Well, and then I saw, the attorneys approached both sides of the galleries to inform them of what was basically going to happen, which was that she was going to declare a mistrial. As she begins to read the note into the record, the bailiff, he doesn't run over to her, but he moves pretty quickly over to her with another sheet of paper. And then there's sort of this moment where she's like, what? People who were already sort of, I guess, resigned to the fact that this was going to be a mistrial. And so, both families were pretty upset and crying. And then there was this moment of like, wait, what is going on? And so we learned that the jury had asked for information regarding 4 phone numbers, indicating that they were still deliberating.
So whiplash, all right. You're thinking it's about to be a mistrial, and then it's not. The judge gave the jury the phone numbers that they requested, and then sent everyone home for the night. The jury resumed deliberations the next morning.
And then, I think it was about an hour after that they sent another note saying that they could not reach a unanimous decision.
Okay, so this time it's for real. It's declared a mistrial.
Right.
What does that mean? Like, what happened next? The judge had to make a decision on what to do with Ed Holley, right? Like, what happens?
After court recess, because the mistrial was declared after 11, everyone came back to court at 2, and Holley's defense team asked for the judge to modify the bail application for Ed Holley. And they asked that he be released, even if that meant that he should be on electronic monitoring, like with an ankle monitor. And she denied that. She denied it after she asked the prosecution if they plan to retry him, and they said that they do intend to move forward with a new trial.
The judge declared Edward Holley be held in jail pending a new trial. Then she called for a conference May 5th to discuss the next steps for the case. I mean, were you able to talk to any of the families on either side, on Edward Holley's side or on Megan McDonald's side? Like, what was their reaction to all of this?
Both families were disappointed in this outcome.
They want some kind of closure for different reasons.
Exactly. Holley's family member described the trial as being very long and tiring and depressing and discouraging. Megan's family, however, while they expressed disappointment, they tried to make it very clear that they were still resolute in pursuing justice for Megan. They still strongly believe that Edward Holley is the person who killed her,
how you feeling? You just spent 7 weeks, not for nothing. You can't say it was for nothing, but like, you're going to have to start, in many ways, start all over again, right? Like, you have to sit through another trial. Like, what are you, or potentially anyway, what are you thinking at this point?
I personally was looking for, when you spend those long days in the hallway during deliberation, I was looking forward to hearing the outcome from the jury so that I could feel sort of a sense of relief from a reporter's perspective in being able to like close a long assignment.
Tell a complete story, like from start to finish, right? Yeah.
Yes. And we don't have that here. So it's left me spinning a little bit and not really sure how I can feel. And so then I keep thinking that I can only imagine how much more so the different families are feeling that same emotion. I guess I say I don't know how I feel.
Yeah. What is known is that on May 5th, we'll find out more, right?
We will, and I will let everyone know.
To read all of Lana Bellamy's excellent reporting on the trial of Edward Holley, visit timesunion.com. That is it for this week. We'll be back next week with more from inside the newsroom. The Eagle is a production of the Times-Union. It's produced and edited by myself, Jessica Marshall, with help from Erica Smith and the Times-Union digital team. Special thanks this week to Dan Clark and Lana Bellamy. Our music is Flyin' by Top Floor. Do you have questions or comments about the Eagle or any podcast that we do here at the Times-Union? Email us at podcast@timesunion.com.